There are stories that shake you long after the headlines fade. Stories that don't make sense, no matter how many times you replay them in your mind. Stories that don't give you closure, only silence, darkness, and questions that feel like knives twisting in your chest. On a quiet evening in the Australian outback, under open skies, on a family property far from the rest of the world, a 4-year-old boy vanished in a way that defies logic. No trace. No sound. No struggle. Just gone. And 6 weeks later, despite military effort, police resources, helicopters, drones, divers, and thousands of search hours, the land still refuses to give up a single answer. Before we dive in, don't forget, like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel. No gloss, no sugarcoat, just raw reality. To understand the disappearance of little Gus Lamont, you need to understand the world he lived in. Oak Park Station, located near the small settlement of Yunta, is the kind of place where the land stretches endlessly, where the horizon is a thin line of heat and dust. It's sheep country. Rugged. Isolated. Quiet in a way that city people can't imagine. If you stand outside the homestead and shout into the wind, the only answer you'll get is the rustling of dry grass and the far-off bleating of sheep. The nearest major highway, the Barrier Highway, lies around 30 kilometers away across unforgiving terrain. This is not the kind of place where strangers wander in. This is not the kind of place where kidnappers hide behind trees. This is not the kind of place where a child can slip away unnoticed for long. The Lamont Murray family had lived on this land for generations. The property was part of their identity, their livelihood, their legacy. Inside that legacy was a little boy. Gus. Soft blonde hair. Boots too big for his feet. A curious, energetic kid who loved to dig in the sand, explore the yard, and shadow his grandmother, Shannon Murray, like a little apprentice. September 27th started like any other day. Hot sun. Dry wind. A family going about their routine. Gus was playing outside near a mound of sand, digging and building, lost in his tiny world of imagination. It was nothing unusual. On a property like this, kids grow up outdoors, running through dust, climbing fences, playing in the open. But that normal day was the last time normal would ever exist again. The shift happened quietly. So quietly that at first, no one realized it had even happened. Around 5 p.m., Gus was still out front, doing what he always did, exploring, scooping up handfuls of sand, walking in little loops. His grandmother Shannon saw him. She was the last person to lay eyes on him. And then comes that half-hour window. The 30 minutes that now feel like eternity. When she stepped back outside around 5:30 p.m. to call him in. There was no little boy running toward her. No tiny boots stomping in the dirt. No giggle. No shout. Nothing. The world, that wide, open land, was suddenly too silent. She searched the immediate area. Called his name. Checked behind the homestead. Checked the vehicles. Checked the yard. But the boy who had been there just minutes earlier had vanished. This wasn't the kind of moment where people panic immediately. This was a family used to open land and wandering kids. You expect to find them under a tree, around a shed, chasing a bird. But this time, there was no sign. And slowly, a quiet dread began to creep in. Within hours, South Australia police arrived. And the search began. A 2-kilometer radius grid was formed around the homestead, the standard for a missing child in remote terrain. Dozens of officers. Volunteers. Neighbors. The SES. Tracking dogs. ATVs. Helicopters hovering overhead as the sun dipped behind the horizon. The air grew colder. The land grew darker. And still, no Gus. By morning, the search escalated into a full-scale operation. The army joined in. Drones scanned the ridges. Helicopters traced the ground in sweeping patterns. Every creek bed, every fence line, every hidden hollow was combed. The outback is unforgiving, but it leaves marks. It leaves footprints. trails, disturbances in dust and sand. But there was nothing. Only one single, lonely footprint was ever found, believed to match the boot Gus would have been wearing. One footprint. Not a trail. Not a direction. Just one. It made no sense. In terrain like this, you should see where a child walked. Even wind-blown land keeps some trace. But here, it was as if the earth swallowed him whole. As days dragged by, the world watched the unfolding tragedy. Conspiracy theories erupted online. Speculation turned wild. Some blamed dingoes. Others whispered about hidden wells or abandoned mine shafts. Some questioned strangers on the highway. Some pointed fingers at the family. But the facts didn't support most theories. Dingoes? Almost non-existent in this part of South Australia. Farmers shoot them on sight. The land is protected by a 1,200-kilometer dog fence. Crocodiles? Wrong part of the country, they don't exist here. Eagles? A 4-year-old is far too heavy. Wild pigs? Would leave blood. There was none. Stranger abduction? The nearest road is 30 kilometers away. That terrain is impossible for a kidnapper to navigate unnoticed. There were no tire marks. No footprints. No vehicle sounds reported. The land gave nothing. By day 6, police scaled back the search. Only to widen it again days later after reassessment. But widening a search weeks later is not the same as widening it on day 1. This is where Ken Gamble, a top Australian private investigator, enters the picture. Gamble believes police underestimated little Gus's abilities. He argues that a 2-kilometer initial search was too small, especially for a child known to be energetic, active, and curious. If he had wandered off, he could have gone much farther. According to Gamble, 7 to 8 kilometers should have been the starting point. And he's right, there are documented cases of young children walking far distances when lost in rural landscapes. But the terrain around Oak Park Station is harsh. An adult could struggle with it, let alone a 4-year-old. Still, Gamble insists. You would think in that terrain there would be footprints if he had walked off. And that's the haunting part. Because there weren't. Not enough of them. Not in enough of a pattern to make sense. Just one footprint, like a ghost left it behind. A dam sits about 600 meters from the homestead, a place that became the center of speculation early on. Police divers searched it. Nothing. Weeks later, they drained the entire 3.2 million liters of water. Every last drop. Just to be sure. Still nothing. No clothing. No body. No disturbance. For many, the silence of the family became another layer of mystery. Gus's mother, Jessica Murray, hasn't been seen publicly since he disappeared. She's reportedly still on the property, caring for her 1-year-old son, Ronnie. His father, Joshua Lamont, refused to speak to reporters. He was 2 hours away at his own farmhouse at the time of the disappearance but has since moved into a home owned by the grandparents. Then there is the now infamous encounter at the property. When Daily Mail tried to speak with Josie Murray, the transgender grandparent, she confronted their reporter with a pump-action shotgun. The footage shows a tense, volatile standoff. The encounter didn't help the family's public image. But silence doesn't equal guilt. Police made it very clear. It is not suggested that any family member is involved. But the secrecy, the tension, the isolation. South Australia police confirmed the public's imagination. Conducted 2 independent reviews of the search strategy. Expert reviewers suggested improvements, but did not criticize the effort or suggest wrongdoing. The police commissioner repeated. There is no evidence of abduction. No evidence of foul play. No evidence of an animal attack. No evidence of a tragic accident. There is simply nothing. And this is where the case becomes something else entirely. Not a mystery with clues. Not a puzzle with missing pieces. But a void. The reveal is that there is no reveal. No remains. No scent. No trail. No answers. This case exposes the brutal truth that even with all our technology, all our drones, helicopters, military resources, experts, nature still holds secrets we cannot pry open. And it raises questions that keep investigators awake at night. Did he really wander off? If so, why didn't the land show it? Why didn't the drones catch anything? How does a 4-year-old walk 7 to 8 kilometers in rough terrain without leaving a visible path? Or did something else happen? Something no one has discovered? Something buried in the silence of that land? Families in crisis often react in unpredictable ways. Silence. Anger. Withdrawal. Pointing a gun at reporters doesn't make someone guilty, it makes them scared, overwhelmed, and desperate for privacy. But the internet has no empathy. Theories continue to swirl. Did someone accidentally harm him and panic? Did he fall into an undiscovered shaft? Was there a predator no one expected? Did someone passing through the land see an opportunity? Or did the vast outback simply swallow him? None of these theories have evidence. But the absence of evidence creates a shadow where anything feels possible. Meanwhile, the family's life is in ruins. People say the Mays may sell Oak Park Station, the land in their bloodline for generations. The tragedy is too heavy. The trauma too deep. Their only child, Jessica, may not be able to continue the family legacy. A grandmother who last saw her grandson alive will carry that moment for the rest of her life. A mother hidden from the world must live with a pain too heavy for words. A father haunted by not being there that day. And a little boy. A little boy who should be kicking dust, laughing in the yard, chasing sheep, is nowhere. In the end, the disappearance of Gus Lamont is not just a mystery. It's a mirror. A reminder that even in a modern world, a world of satellites, GPS, and surveillance, there are still places where a human being can vanish without a trace. Places where the land is bigger than our logic, stronger than our assumptions, colder than our hope. And it forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive. Sometimes answers don't come. Sometimes the world doesn't return what it takes. For the people of Yenta, for the strangers online, for the search teams who gave everything, the hardest part isn't the fear. It's the silence. The silence of open land. The silence of a missing child. The silence left behind when the world keeps turning but someone you love doesn't return. 6 weeks. Thousands of hours. Millions of liters of water drained. Experts consulted. Reviews conducted. And still, a boy named Gus remains missing. His footprints ended. The questions didn't. This is the harshest kind of raw reality. A story with no ending. A tragedy suspended in time. A mystery that continues to stare back at us, empty and unforgiving. And until the land gives something back, we're left with only a painful truth. Some disappearances don't close. Some stories don't finish. Some heartbreaks don't heal. And somewhere in the vast quiet of the Australian outback, that truth still whispers through the dust.